Have you ever been really high in your own home, stumbling around, not sure where you are, really paranoid and very hungry? Well, neither have I, but I believe you have a right to do so. Today I would like to persuade to you why legalizing drugs is the best course of action to alleviate some of the issues we are currently having with drug abuse and drug addiction. I am a person who resides in the United States, and therefore I inherently have a say in the legislation and the way our government uses its policies, and I believe that our current stance on drugs is incorrect and not helpful to the population. This thought came to me when I was watching a very popular show called Euphoria, a show which follows a drug addict girl. But what struck me was not the drug addict girl, but rather the fact that every other supposed teenager in the show was an alcoholic. Also, the parents were alcoholics, but this was pretty much glossed over and focused mostly on the drugs at hand, which the girl was using, even though the alcoholics seemed much more dangerous and were endangering more people than just themselves. And this made me think that maybe drug use is not the issue, and there are more important underlying issues that we must face before focusing on arresting anyone who decides to get high. So I believe that the United States should legalize drugs, and the best course of action is to decriminalize and legalize drugs in order to improve education, research, and harm reduction information to the populace. In 2019, more than 70,000 people died of a drug overdose, according to the Centers for Disease Control. A further 32 million people were reported to be frequent drug users in the United States, according to the National Institute for Health. This is also from 2019. This shows that it's a very, very common issue, and there are many, many people suffering and dying from drug use, and our current protocol for handling this is to arrest drug users rather than focusing on treating their mental illnesses and underlying poverty or conditions which led them to the drug use. Currently, we have very little research on many drugs that are used in the black market. We also have very little education for people on how to properly use drugs and avoid addiction. In addition, we do not have the freedom to choose what we can put in our own bodies, and this is a very large problem. 45% of people incarcerated in federal prisons are incarcerated because of drug-related charges, according to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Now, this shows that clearly we've been focusing mostly on arresting users rather than helping them. Another issue is the use of black market substances. Now, many people end up addicted to drugs, and sadly, their only course of action is to go to the black market in order to continue using. And in the black market, they have a much higher chance of receiving tainted chemicals. It's been shown by the CDC that 70% of all overdoses are synthetic opiates like fentanyl, which are passed around in the black market as easy substitutes for other drugs which they may be trying to find. Now, as you can see, this is a very large issue, and there is a solution. And in my opinion, the solution involves legalizing drugs and focusing on improving the environment of these people rather than arresting them. Now, the real problem is not drugs, but the environment. As I said, drugs being illegal is only worsening this situation by increasing incarceration rates and reducing the amount of federal spending used on actually helping these people. Statistically, 1 in 10 people in America use drugs, and this is including children. So as you can see, the rate among adults is probably even higher. So not everyone who is using drugs is using them poorly. So clearly there is a proper way of administering drugs, and this is what we need to focus our research on. And legalizing drugs will allow us to put much more information out there on how to properly administer drugs to avoid drug addiction and drug overdose. Legalizing will also allow for more research to be conducted, as many of the drugs floating around in the black market are poorly researched and are usually not very pure or safe. Users, once we legalize drugs, will also not be arrested, further worsening their condition, and we can focus on treating them with medications that might also not be legal at this current time. So people will be receiving a safer supply of drugs, will not be arrested, and there will be more federal spending that will be able to be used for alleviating the situation that has placed them into the grips of drug addiction, rather than needlessly arresting them and taking away their freedom. Now, a good example of this would be the Netherlands. The Netherlands has fully decriminalized drugs for quite some time now, and the rate of drug-related deaths is 252 deaths per year. And now this is out of a population of more than 17 million people. Now compare this to 70,000 deaths amongst 330 million people, give or take, in the United States. This means that when adjusted for population size, the deaths occurring because of drug overdose in the Netherlands is more than 10 times lower than that of the United States. And this is a country which has fully decriminalized all drugs and drug use. And that statistic, the 252 deaths, that comes from the European Union's Center for Drug Use and Drug Abuse Statistics. Because now the important thing to remember is that the Netherlands focuses on treating the underlying conditions rather than arresting those who use. And this has clearly proved very, very important to creating a better situation for its people and reducing drug addiction. They treat drug addiction as an mental illness rather than something to incarcerate people by. So I believe that implementing these strategies within the United States by decriminalizing drugs and increasing our research and our education will greatly help reduce the needless deaths and the needless incarceration that is currently occurring because of drug use. So to conclude, I believe that we should decriminalize drugs in order to decrease the deaths that are occurring because of drugs, as well as increase education, harm reduction, and reduce the amount of federal spending on the war on drugs. And in doing so, decrease the amount of people needlessly incarcerated. So if you get the chance, go out and vote on propositions which will ease our current laws on drugs and will increase research and hopefully decriminalize drug use in order to help all those who are currently in the grips of drug addiction or are currently incarcerated because of drug use. Thank you very much and have a great night.